people don't know what I look like until now. Until they start going to the movies. They're gonna see my face. Big deal.
Yo, what's good? OMG Hawk, one-man gang, back at y'all with another one.
The first hit of mine, ain't no telling where it take you, but the second hit of heart. Like a feeling she relate to, you better pray.
You know, I hope everyone is well as always. Salute to those who still making good on your New Year's resolutions. And for those that failed already, don't be too hard on yourself. It's early enough in the year you can start over and act like you never fell off. I gotta say, out of all the cases I've researched, this one by far has touched the most nerves in me personally. As always, the details of the case are disturbing and viewer discretion is advised, but this case in particular has extremely disturbing details and images of violence, so if that's not for you, I wouldn't recommend viewing any further. If you can tolerate such content, just make sure you hit the subscribe button and I'll make sure I keep them coming. I appreciate you. Let's get to it. Today's case brings us to the infamous city of Chicago, Illinois.
If you don't know by now, I'm talking about Chi-Town.
Chicago is the largest city in the Midwest region of the United States and the third largest by population with about 2.7 million people. Chi-Town has one of the most impressive cityscapes in the country with some of the tallest skyscrapers America has and sits right on the beautiful Lake Michigan. Now, while Chicago is best known for deep dish pizza and Al Capone stories, in recent years it's become the birthplace of the hip-hop subgenre known as drill music, a style that has now been adopted by artists worldwide. Oh yeah, did I mention? Chicago is unfortunately one of the most violent places in the country. Sadly, the city reported 797 homicides by the end of 2021. Although plagued with violence, Chicago is still an amazing city ripe with culture, and I personally want to check out that hot dog spot called the Wiener Circle. Definitely gotta make that happen. We're gonna start today's story on the 4800 block of West Congress Parkway in the Austin neighborhood on the city's west side. This is where 15-year-old Yasmin Acree lived with her older brother DeMarcus in a two-family house owned by their aunt through marriage and adoptive mother, Rose Mae Starnes. Yasmin and DeMarcus settled in here with Rose after being turned over by authorities in their home state of Kentucky. The siblings' lives in Kentucky were heartbreaking as their mother, Joyce Acree, struggled with drug addiction and had neglected her kids to the point that the state removed them from her custody when they were just toddlers. They were moved around between various foster homes, group homes, and short stints back with their mother until moving in with Rose in 2001. It seems Joyce Acree was determined to have her kids live with family, and with good reason. In another way too often case of Child Protective Services in America dropping the ball when it comes to providing safe havens for the children that they removed from what were deemed to be unfit or unsafe situations, Yasmin and DeMarcus were removed from one nightmare and sent to a series of them as they were subjected to physical and emotional abuse in various placements, as well as Yasmin being subjected to sexual abuse at the hands of people trusted to protect her for years. After the state's failed attempts to protect the children, Rose reluctantly took them in at the urging of other family members and eventually formally adopted Yasmin and DeMarcus in 2006. Now, even though Yasmin and DeMarcus were now with relatives who we would naturally assume would have a more genuine interest in their well-being, things were far from happily ever after as the effects of long-term abuse understandably left the kids with emotional and behavioral issues. Add to that, Rose's parenting style was at the least questionable and considered by many just straight up abusive. To be fair, Rose didn't initially want the responsibility for whatever her personal reasons were, and I don't want to judge her for that. I know a lot of times our aunts, sisters, grandmothers, shit, even our great-grandmothers are unfairly burdened with the responsibilities of parenthood when our loved ones' personal issues overbear their parental responsibilities. It even happened to me personally as a kid. More often than not, the displaced children come with some issues that require some extra attention, patience, and love that these stand-in parents may not be capable of providing. Yasmin in particular would have some deep-rooted issues from all the trauma she suffered before arriving in Chicago. The molestation in particular left her with self-esteem issues as well as problems understanding boundaries. She would act out by trying to touch others inappropriately, and even as 9 years old, caseworkers would state in reports that Yasmin shouldn't be left alone with other kids, and that a, quote, safety plan should be set in place in order to protect Yasmin and any other children around her. Now, Rose, by her own admission, was overwhelmed and had a hard time dealing with Yasmin and DeMarcus's behavior. She was quoted saying,
"I whipped him. DeMarcus was just a hard head. I used an extension cord."
From DeMarcus's perspective, the punishment was excessive, as he recalls being beat all the time and locked downstairs in the home's cold, musty basement. Yasmin was forced to spend a considerable amount of time down there as well. Rose said she loved Yasmin and did everything she could to keep her safe, but oftentimes when her behavior came too much to handle, she would whip her with a belt or lock her down in the basement for long periods of time. According to Rose, this was because, quote,
"I didn't want people finding out about Yasmin, and I didn't want Yasmin doing things to other kids."
You know, I am far from any kind of professional, but if I had to guess, I'd say whipping and isolating Yasmin in the basement wasn't what CPS had in mind for a safety plan. The kid's grandfather told the Chicago Tribune,
"It wasn't a good situation. I imagine it was pretty lonesome down there."
By 2007, Yasmin's room was in the basement, and to add to her loneliness, Rose was fed up with a then 16-year-old DeMarcus's behavior and kicked him out the house, leaving Yasmin on her own in the last few months going into the new year. Now, January 15, 2008 seemed like a regular day for Yasmin. She hung out at the North Lawndale YMCA for a while, went back home, and did some laundry before going to bed. Rose was about 45 minutes away in Elgin, Illinois on a 2-day casino trip, spending time with her older daughter. She left Yasmin alone in the apartment with her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Charles Burt, who also rented a room in the home. Now, early the next morning on January 16th, Charles claimed that as he was taking out the garbage on his way to work, he noticed that the basement door had been broken into. A padlock that would normally secure the door had been cut, and the whole door jamb was busted off. He says he looked around in the basement but didn't see Yasmin anywhere and just assumed she had already left for school. He claimed he called Rose at the casino that morning and told her that the basement door had been broken into and then went on about his day. Now, Rose claims she never got this call from Charles as she was having some phone issues that day. Rose says she won about $6,000 by the morning's end. She had left the casino, went and bought a new phone, did some clothes shopping, and had lunch at the Olive Garden before arriving back home that afternoon. She said her niece had told her the house was burglarized, and after seeing the damage, she had Charles fix the door right away. Rose claimed late in the afternoon she remembered that Yasmin had had a half day of school and should have been home hours ago. With no sign of Yasmin and the cold winter darkness approaching, Rose called 911 to report her missing for the first time at 5:31 that evening. City police records show she called 911 several more times before police finally arrived at 7:04.
Get up and get down. 911 is joking your town.
Unfortunately, not too much of an investigation was done initially. Police went to the Y and Jasmine's school to see if she had possibly stayed late for some type of extracurricular activity, and several girls at the school told police that Yasmin had run away, even telling police she had called them or texted them indicating she left on her own admission. This seemed to be enough for police at the time, and Yasmin was considered a runaway. No evidence was collected, and I'm honestly not sure if police were informed about the broken door. Yasmin's room appeared untouched, and all of her personal items as well as her glasses were still in her room. Weeks turned to months, and investigators started really looking into the case after pressure from the family and the public. Police would later admit their mishandling of the initial investigation, as no physical evidence was collected and a lot of information was uncorroborated. For example, phone records would dispute Yasmin's classmates' accounts of her calls and texts about running away, and two of the girls would later admit to investigators that they made it up to mislead the police for their own amusement.
What?
I know, but I'm gonna just leave that alone. Yasmin Acree is still missing, and her whereabouts are a mystery until this day. Sadly, she's presumed dead, and since her disappearance, her mother Joyce Acree and adoptive mother Rose Mae Starnes have both passed away. DeMarcus and other families still hold out hope that her remains could be found so she could be laid to rest peacefully. At a point when faith was starting to fade, a small light of hope would start flickering out of an extremely dark place. A man in Cook County Jail, awaiting trial for a series of the most horrendous crimes imaginable, has alluded to having the heartbreaking answers. And perhaps an oversight, perhaps not, this man used to live right upstairs from Yasmin in Rose's home on West Congress Parkway, and the two knew each other quite well. Back in 2005, a then 30-year-old Jimmy Terrell Smith was released on parole after serving 10 years in prison for attempted murder. Jimmy's father, Jimmy Lee Hawkins, had been renting a room from Rose in the basement of the West Congress Parkway house, and their families were close friends for many years. Rose would allow Jimmy Terrell Smith to parole to the house, but she didn't want him in the basement close to the kids, so she rented him a room in the upstairs apartment of the home. Jimmy was raised by his grandmother, as his mother was addicted to drugs and had abandoned him at an early age. He was arrested a lot as a juvenile for various petty crimes before the attempted murder conviction sent the young man away for a decade. Now, upon his release, Jimmy showed no signs of changing his criminal ways, as he was known to always carry a firearm and started selling drugs near Rose's house. He ended up getting arrested multiple times and had moved out the home after less than a year. Although Jimmy only lived upstairs for a short period of time, and Rose tried to keep him away from Yasmin by moving him in upstairs, it wasn't enough, as the two started to grow fond of each other. Now, to be clear, there was no evidence of any sexual or intimate relationship between them, but it was apparent that Jimmy had taken a questionable interest in Yasmin, and that he had definitely left an impression on her even after he moved out the home. DeMarcus recalled a family gathering that Jimmy attended, where he allegedly gave Yasmin a beer and stroked her hair, telling her she looked like Stacey Dash. DeMarcus said that as soon as he was sure that Yasmin was really missing, he immediately suspected Jimmy could have been involved. Now, for some reason, this information wasn't relayed to police by anyone in the family. In fact, Jimmy wasn't on investigators' radar as a suspect at all. Rose later recalled letting Yasmin accompany her to another family gathering 2 weeks before her disappearance, where Jimmy again expressed his interest in the teen girl, but even she neglected to inform police about Jimmy. Rose told reporters years later that she didn't want to risk falsely accusing anyone, so she hadn't informed police about the ex-con's interest. Rose did eventually call detectives in mid-May 2009 with her suspicions of Jimmy. What finally compelled her to make this call well over a year later? A local TV news story that left her heart in her stomach. Jimmy Terrell Smith had just been arrested for arguably some of the most despicable crimes in Chicago's history. On May 9, 2009, Jimmy was at a home in the Inglewood neighborhood of the city. Also at the home were two young women, 21 and 22 years old, and two teen girls, both 14 years old, having a girls' night sleepover. One of the younger girls was woken up by Jimmy making indecent advances toward her. She declined, and Jimmy offered her a $100 bill to comply. When she still refused, Jimmy started choking her and commanded that his dog start biting the teen. The 22-year-old girl woke up and came to the younger girl's defense, briefly getting them both locked away safely in another room. Jimmy busted through the door with a gun, forced all the girls into a room, and tied their hands with ripped bed sheets. He took the 22-year-old girl into a bedroom, assaulted her, before indecently assaulting the 14-year-old. Jimmy forced all 4 girls into a vehicle and took them to a filthy abandoned garage in nearby Harvey, Illinois. He held them captive for 2 days and had indecently assaulted each of them, even assaulting one girl with a foreign object. The 2 days were psychological torture as Jimmy forced the girls to use the bathroom on the garage floor and played a Russian roulette-style game where he would load a round in a revolver, spin the barrel, point it at one of the girls, and pull the trigger. He choked the girls until they lost consciousness, bound their bodies with rope and tape before leaving them to die in the filthy garage. Fortunately, the girls came to, managed to free themselves. The 22-year-old actually bit through her bindings, and they escaped the garage, finding help at a nearby business. The girls identified their attacker as Jimmy Terrell Smith, and he was quickly arrested and booked into the Cook County Jail. Now, after Rose tipped detectives off about Jimmy's possible involvement, he was interrogated multiple times regarding Yasmin's disappearance. Although he has never confessed to police or been charged in Yasmin's case, he did a series of interviews in 2011 with the Chicago Tribune where he claims he knows what happened to her. He also made references to 3 other homicides but told reporters he didn't want to, quote, stick his head in a noose. Although it is possible that he wasn't responsible and was using the suspicion to delay his sexual assault trial, it is the strongest lead we have in Yasmin's disappearance. Jimmy sat in Cook County Jail for a stunning 8 years before his case was resolved. In desperate efforts to delay his trial as a means of strategy, he went through numerous public defenders, and in December 2014, he made headlines again when he beat and stabbed one of his public defenders with a homemade knife while handcuffed after a legal meeting at the jail. Public defender Richard Cruss was seriously injured but survived, and Jimmy was charged with attempted murder for the attack. Jimmy would represent himself in this case, as well as the kidnapping and torture of the 4 young girls case as well. Now, although he was within his legal right to do so, this was unnerving because it gave Jimmy access to evidence including photographs of the victims that are disturbing in nature, as well as the victim statements and personal information. Now, the judge had ordered Jimmy only be allowed access to the case files on a laptop that was to be kept by the jail and only used by Jimmy under a correction officer's supervision. Another factor was the possibility that if the case went to trial, Jimmy would be allowed to question his victims face-to-face in open court, which would just be another tragic experience for the girls who were all young women by this time, all struggling in their own ways to move forward with the trauma. As the trial approached in 2014, Jimmy told another inmate he was shopping for a hitman. His goal was to have the judge and prosecutor on his case murdered in an effort to derail the trial. The other inmate, seeing this as an opportunity to help his own legal situation, plugged him in with an undercover sheriff's officer that was posing as a contract killer named Big Mo. He negotiated a price of $5,000 for the hit and was rearrested in jail and charged for the murder conspiracy. He was successful in delaying the original trial again, as the judge and prosecutor were both removed from the case. I mean, I suppose it would be hard to be unbiased towards someone who just tried to take you out. In March 2016, just moments before the trial of the 4 girls' kidnapping, Jimmy shocked everyone when he agreed to plead guilty to 4 counts of aggravated criminal sexual assault, which would spare the cost of trial, and more importantly, the victims wouldn't have to testify and relive their nightmare. Jimmy Terrell Smith would now head back to Cook County Jail to await sentencing on the case and await trial on the Jailhouse murder plot. On December 5th, 2016, Correctional staff at the jail noticed Jimmy still had the court-issued laptop, but he refused officers' request to hand it over and started trying to destroy it. And in a cowardly act captured on video by correction staff, Jimmy punched a female CO in the face, knocking her down before immediately surrendering to the male officers. He was sent to segregation and the COs recovered the laptop. When examining the laptop's contents, investigators discovered various lewd selfies Jimmy had taken inside the prison, as well as the beginnings of a vlog-style show he was creating titled My Back's Against the Wall, live from Crook County Jail.
Hello, this is Jimmy Smith. Welcome to this episode of My Back Against the Wall, coming to you live from Crook County Jail.
It appears he hadn't gotten too far into production before losing the laptop. On September 26, 2017, Jimmy Terrell Smith was finally sentenced to a total of 110 years for the kidnapping and assaults on the young women. The judge noted that he could have received a total of 120 years, but was spared 10 years since he spared his victims from having to testify at trial. He must serve 93 and a half years in prison before being eligible for parole. In October 2019, he was convicted on 2 counts of soliciting murder for hire for his attempt to have the judge and prosecutor taken out. He was sentenced to 40 years on each count. Jimmy Terrell Smith will spend the rest of his natural life behind bars. Yeah, this whole case is insanity. Before anything else, my best wishes to the surviving victims. I couldn't begin to imagine their daily struggles, and I hope they know they're queens, and I hope they're staying strong. Jimmy Terrell Smith was a real monster. You know me, I try to be objective, and I wonder what can make a human so deranged. I learned he was born to a teenage mother who was addicted to drugs and had abused and abandoned him, but so was Yasmin. Yasmin's story is an extreme case, but unfortunately it's not a unique one. The adults in her life failed to protect her over and over again, and I can imagine that weighs heavy on a few people's conscience. At least I hope it would. I'm not really a big what-if kind of person, but something I thought about while researching this case really bothers me, and I can't unthink it. When Jimmy committed the horrible crimes that he was sentenced for, he left those girls alive in the garage. Now, I can't call it whether or not that was his intention or if the girls' perseverance saved their lives, but either way, they were alive. I can't help but think, what if Yasmin was alive somewhere for who knows how long and just couldn't free herself? What if someone had thought to save the broken door evidence or told police about Jimmy right when they knew Yasmin was missing? Or even if they just noticed she was supposed to be home early from school that day, maybe she would have had a chance. The judge that sentenced Jimmy said he felt that he showed genuine remorse by taking the plea and not putting the victims through trial. If he is responsible for Yasmin's disappearance, we can only hope that one day he'll show us another shred of human decency and bring Yasmin's family closure. And if he isn't, I just hope the truth comes to light so she could be laid to rest the right way, someplace where she could finally be safe. This one fucked me up, I can't lie to you. I'm about to go put something in the air for Yasmin and all the victims of prolonged repeated abuse. I wish life treated her more fairly. I don't think this one will ever sit right with me. If you're still here, I do appreciate you. Please make sure you hit the subscribe button. I'll keep bringing you these cases. Much love to every young person sitting in a residential, inpatient hospital, group home, anywhere that's not home. You know what I mean? Stay strong. I'm thinking about you if nobody else is. You know what I mean? Everyone, please stay well, stay safe. Until next time, One Man Gang.